It's definitely memorization versus practicing, for sure. Do more practice, focus less on memorization, and I would say practice. That's all you could do. And honestly, you're gonna hope that, I'm not gonna lie, I think I actually saw one of the questions that I had in a practice book, and it was like the same exact on the bar exam.
I hear that all the time. Like, I saw, even if it's like 1 out of 200 questions, it's still like you feel prepared now. Like, okay, like I was doing the right thing. Like I was doing something that's actually helpful.
I would tell them to take the bar seriously. It's not one of those tests that you can just, you know, pull an all-nighter. It's
can't cram for the bar exam.
No, and a second piece of advice that I would give is plan it out. You know, take it seriously, plan it out. Because if you don't have a plan, you will get lost. Because there's so many subjects and there's so many things that you need to know. And the most important part about knowing that information is how to apply it. And planning really helps.
Implement active learning, honestly.
You're like, I'm sticking with this.
I'm sticking with it. It definitely, I think that makes studying so much easier. You know, the different kind of learners. For my personal experience, I would, you know, read the material, then I would chart it out. So it's like you're kind of repeating your studying. Essentially, you read it and you chart it out. So essentially, it's like you're reading it again.
Yeah, so you were more a visual learner, right? Then, yeah. And then so tell me what you did after that. Yeah.
What also assisted me was when I would just explain the law to people. So I would speak the law, explain the policy reasons behind it, why the law is relevant, and any exceptions. So having a conversation with another helps ingrain the material in my mind. So those two experiences are definitely very rewarding for me.
I would say listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. There's a lot of things that people might, you know, put out there like, hey, you need to do this. Like, let's say, for instance, you're doing an outline and you're doing it and you might not feel like you're retaining as much information. Listen to that. Don't just be like, okay, well, this is just what I have to do. Like, if you see that that's not something that's sticking with you, don't be afraid to change it up. Don't be afraid to speak up if you're, you know, working with a tutor and say, hey, I want to change this up. I think there's a better method for me to retain more information. And that was the one thing with Vinco that I really liked, that I just want to note, that we were always ready to change something if it wasn't working. We were trying out different things. It wasn't just like, oh, here's the list. This is just what you have to do. It was really like very malleable. It could change based on how you felt about it. So I would just say, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to change something up if you feel like it's not working for you. Don't just feel like, oh, I have to do this because this person is doing this, or because this bar company gave me this syllabus and I just have to complete everything. I think listening to yourself and knowing, like, and it's not hard. I feel like when you say listen to yourself, people are like, oh, but I think I know. Like, you know inside when you're writing that essay or when you're doing that outline, at the end of that assignment, you know how it made you feel. And I think that's important.
Why would you become a lawyer? No.
No.
It is. No, it's start practice questions from the first day. Practice MBE questions, start timing yourself and start doing them. Practice essay questions, start timing yourself.
But I don't know anything. How can I
the only way you're going to know stuff is by doing it. You're going to learn it by doing the practice. And that's the only way to study, because you're not going to have time to sit there and read and memorize. It's just not possible.
As far as what really I do believe was the difference between passing and not passing was that the other times that I've taken the exam, I never really believed that I could, you know? So I looked at it, and I know this is going to sound funny, but I don't know if you've ever seen Creed. It's a boxing movie, but you have like before you go into the match, you have the hood on, you have the music on, you have all this adrenaline, and you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to fight and I'm going to win. I literally had that mentality where I told myself, and I actually believed that I could pass the day of the exam. So the day of the exam, I was actually very relaxed because I was like, you know what? I fully prepared and I am 100% confident that I can do this. So I would say to anyone, especially repeat takers, because I know that that's kind of like a shot to your confidence. I think that state of mind and just having ultimate confidence is a big key to being able to succeed.
My piece of advice would probably be,
I know, right? There's a lot of things. You could pick like two if you can't choose between that.
One I want to, like, this is probably not like the best advice, but one I want to say is take time for yourself.
No, that's excellent advice.
I was that person that was like, no, I gotta study like every day, and like my coach was like, you need a you day, and I'm like, me day, I'll do that after the bar, like we're not doing this today. But you start to get burnt out, and you start to realize, if you're doing it the right way, you start to realize, I'm learning the same things over and over and over again. Like there's not much more I can learn. Like I remember the second time that I took the bar, it was like the day before, and I was sitting there doing practice questions, and this time I was like, why? Like I don't need to, like I'm gonna pass the bar. And it's like it's a different feeling, and you know that feeling that you feel that this is it, like there's nothing else I could possibly do. It would be that, and it'd also be not to neglect the areas that you think you did well in the first time. So like my strongest point was the MPTs, and I realized that this time around, like toward like the middle, I was like, damn, I haven't been like doing a lot of MPTs, like I should probably do it. And yes, focus on it, but don't focus on it too much that you neglect everything else. So I guess an overall thing would be just make sure you give the most amount of time to each subject. Like there's 3 parts of the exam, they all matter, right? And don't be afraid to tell your coach what you're bad at. Like don't think that if I tell her this, then she's gonna think that like I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like that's the best part to do, so that you focus on that more. Like my worst thing was contracts, and I think I spent more than the allotted 3 to 4 days on that, and my coach knew that, and it was because I didn't want to see that on the bar again, and I didn't. But it's like I also wanted to.
But you could have.
I wanted to be prepared for it if it came my way, and then like when I didn't see it, I was a little bummed because I was like, I would have aced this.
But all things considered, it worked out fine.
Yeah, like just be honest with yourself, be honest with your coach, and I feel that's the only way that you can move forward. Because if you're lying to yourself, you're not going to really focus on what you need to focus
on. Do as many multiple choice questions that you possibly can do. And I don't mean just, hey, your bar tutor or your bar coach says, do 50 questions today. You're definitely going to do those 50 questions. But at some point later in the day, you find yourself, you still have steam going. You feel like you can sit there for another hour studying, even another half hour studying. Do an extra 15 questions, do an extra 30 questions. And they can be from anywhere you find them. If they're just lying on the floor and you're like, oh, I haven't touched these, pick them up and just sit there and do them. I'm going to tack on an extra word of advice there because it goes to this to the same point, and that is do all of your questions timed. And it's going to feel like it's going to feel like a daunting task. You're going to say, what if I don't know the information? I haven't studied this, so how am I going to time myself for something that I haven't studied? Because the timing's not going to seem appropriate. It's not going to show the real value here. I get that, and that's totally fine. Do it timed anyway. Come up with an educated guess, because there are going to be times on the bar exam where you're not going to know the answer to a question, but you're going to learn how you get to that answer in a really quick manner and save yourself time.
Have confidence in the studying that you have done up until this point. Don't go into a panic. I think a lot of people, they wonder what's going to happen on the day of the exam.
Yeah.
In theory, what you're doing and what you're practicing is not so much just the question is knowledge, but also the ability to take the bar exam. When you do those practice questions and you're doing 50 of them and you're timing yourself and you're saying, all right, I got an hour and a half to do 50 questions. And, what you're doing is just aligning yourself with a pattern of success. The students that have successfully passed, they have all mastered and maybe not even mastered, but they've all become comfortable with the timing aspect of it. And that's going to be your biggest friend. So just know that the practice that you've done and up until this point has put you in a position to pass the bar exam.
One would definitely be to evaluate your time, especially if you're working with Vinco, you're going to know how you should be using your time.
Yeah.
But the other would definitely be to be realistic and put in the work that needs to be put in. This is something that only you can do, right? There's no special, or magic pill or anything that tells you
the fairy dust, pixie dust. I would buy it if it were there. We would give it to you. I promise.
Right. There's nothing any coach can give you to make you pass unless you do the work yourself. Any coaching program, especially Vinco, we're here to give you the tools. We're not here to give you, all the answers to passing the exam. So work, that's a really big thing.
I would say do as many MBE questions as you can, even if it's 30 a day, be consistent, because you can gain a lot of points from the MBE. I missed the first time I took it, I missed the passing score by 5 points. My essays are fine. They were pretty consistently high. But the MBEs, you can make up the difference, even if you miss an essay, right? You can make up the difference of the MBEs, and it also builds up your stamina if you're doing it every day.
I think the first piece of advice that I give them is to do what they think works best for them. Whatever their learning style was, either in undergrad, high school, law school, what they thought that helped them, to learn material, to memorize, black letter law, to kind of focus on that so that they can learn the material.
Yeah.
And then the second piece of advice that I usually give them is to do as much practice as possible, from multiple sources, not just whatever they have. So try to mix it up, because the bar isn't just one set of questions. You're going to get a lot of different multiple choice questions.
Practice, 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 and review. Practice questions and review the answers. I think that's one of the most important components, if not the most important component, to passing the bar.
Wow, one piece. Okay.
Maybe two. It's a real struggle because it's you.
Honestly, the most honest thing I can say is, and I think you told me this, so I am going to credit you for this quote. But I think the most important thing you told me is you cannot cheat the system. This is a bar exam, and this is hard work. And a lot of smart people are taking this exam, and a lot of smart people are not successful at this exam, because you need to understand that this is a hard exam. So if having that laser focus, shutting everything down, understanding that this exam is made for you to fail, it's not made for you to pass, really shifts your perspective. And two, sticking to the plan. It's just so hard to not stick to the plan. And that was a challenge for me. So I think really just that would be the two most helpful things I can say to anyone.
Know your learning style and have a plan for you.
Do not abandon your law school methods of learning. I promise you, if I had done that the first time around, I would have passed the first time.
I tell them that they must do at least 3,000 or more MBEs, get as much practice essays as possible, and manage their time well, and also have, you know, some me time. You know, you don't want to burn out. You don't want to, you know, go so hard in the beginning that you have nothing left in the end.
Yeah.
But you just gotta pace yourself and manage, you know, your time. Like, you know, it's doable. This test is designed for you to pass, but you have to put in the work and effort to do that.
Practice questions.
Practice questions. I know, right? We're like a broken record.
Like, it is so funny because when I took bar exam, one question in particular showed up on the exam, and I kid you not, that was like, the topic was not in my outlines. It was not in like anything that I had skimming through, but it was in one of the practice essays that I had done. And I'm like, I saw it and I'm like, oh, I know this. And it was just like, oh, super fingers typing away, because it was just like that practicing. One, the practice questions gave me that knowledge.
Yeah.
People realize that when you're practicing the essays, when you're practicing the multiple choice, if you're doing it correctly and you're reviewing the incorrect answers, you can get a lot of knowledge about the law that you might not find in other places.
Yeah.
And there's a nice way that they break it down that you can kind of absorb it and you can get the information. But if one thing, practice questions.
Definitely do 3,000 questions.
MBEs, when you say practice.
Yeah, MBE questions, right? Do a lot of essays, but make sure you're not strengthening your strengths, if that makes sense. Like, don't just work on the subject areas that you're strong at. Don't be afraid of, you know, if you do an essay and you don't finish in time or you didn't know the rule, okay, look at the answer and then do it again. Put the timer on and do it again. You have to face that. You have to face that fear and break that anxiety, so that the thing that makes you uncomfortable or throws you off becomes something that you actually look forward to. Because that was the issue for me with the MBEs, and then I felt like I got to a point, maybe not mastery, but I got good at it, right?
I don't know, man. I might call it mastery. You really got that MBEs were up far above passing. So right. Yeah, but that was the amount of questions.
Right. So doing that, and then also, like I said, I keep saying the mindset part, but I think you have, and this was something that, you know, my coach told me, was that you have to take the power. You have to take the power back from the exam, especially as people who are repeat takers. I think that's the hardest part, because you feel like this is happening to you, and it becomes this whole why me, instead of you reclaiming that power and saying, okay, this is a test, but I got to this point. I'm going to conquer this test, and, you know, nothing is going to stop me. And when I see something I don't know, I'm not going to get, you know, flustered or rattled. I'm going to just push through and use my, you know, fundamentals and my skills that I've learned and execute.
My biggest thing to tell somebody, and I will literally tell this to somebody on the street that I see taking the bar exam, because it happened to me last weekend, is to study the way you studied in law school. Don't defer to the commercial bar prep course telling you and force feeding you what you need to do. If you don't think you need to attend a lecture because you are decent in tort law and you think that going through the condensed outline that's given to you is just enough, then do it. I mean, the condensed outline is exactly what's given to you in the lecture, so it's almost the same thing, just double. So just study the way you studied in law school, because you went through 3 or 4 years of studying, of finals, of papers, and you learned and grew and figured out yourself and how to study. So keep true to that, because it's going to help you through. And my next piece of advice would be definitely to do practice questions, because I feel like I learned all of the law, mostly all of the law, from doing practice questions. Yes, I outlined. Yes, I took my outlines and I condensed those outlines and condensed those outlines and condensed those outlines. But at the end of the day, what I ended up doing was taking those outlines and taking all those questions that I did, whether they be missed or I had a question on them or I just didn't, I got the law right but didn't understand why. I ended up weaving the two together and making like one mass outline. And just from all that law, it was insane how much law I knew just from taking those two aspects and merging them together.
Okay, the first thing I would tell them is practice. I think this is another trap that I fell into, was trying to memorize the bulk of my time. And then after I memorized all day, I was kind of burnt out and would maybe do like 20 MBE questions and call it a day. No. Practice.
I can't take it.
I know. Practice. And then, in addition to practice, actually review the practice. Because if you spend, let's say you do a set of questions and that's it for your time, you don't want to do any more, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, because the more you practice and the more you review, you can almost guarantee that you're going to see a fact pattern similar to one that you've done. And if you don't review it, you'll never remember it. Even if you get it right, review it. Why did you get it right? Why did you pick that answer? And so then when you go back, and you will see the problem again from one of the question banks you're using.
There's only so many ways to ask that kind of question.
Exactly. You're going to see it again. You're going to be like, it's actually like a pat on, you pat yourself on the back, go, oh, I've seen that. I've seen something like this before. I could do this. I know that question. It boosts your confidence. So practice. And in addition, practicing helps to build stamina, because 6 hours is no joke for a test. It's a long time. You get a lunch break, but you know. So the more you train your brain to sit for long periods of time and take practice questions or write essays, the more equipped you are the day of the test. So it's easier not to zone out or to get distracted.
Yeah.
Your brain has been accustomed to literally like sitting down and focusing for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hour blocks of time.
Practice, because it doesn't matter how much you know. If you don't know how to apply it and you don't know how to use what you know, you're not going to go anywhere. And I think practicing and getting a structure is just super important.
I would say probably the most important thing would be to have an outlet that's not bar prep related. So for me, when I was studying for the bar, I decided to take up running casually, just because I thought it was important. You know, also it was the springtime, summer, get outside, and I gave myself, you know, that time, that hour a day, and I focused my energy on something else, just for 1 hour a day. But I think that was most important, because that's the only thing that kept me sane, you know, on a scale of saneness during bar prep.
As sane as one can be, yeah.
I think that was something that was really important, to at least get that outlet and have one thing that you could focus your energy on. Not something that's going to be too demanding, of course, but this was just like, I would go out for a run for 30 minutes and come back. So I think that's probably the most important advice you can give.
Don't drive yourself crazy. Don't drive yourself crazy.
Valid.
Like the exam can be, I think, honestly, it's more a lot of mental. You know, it's like, calm down, don't drive yourself crazy, and focus. Absolutely. That is, I guess, a bit of advice.
I would say that not everyone is the same as you, so don't compare yourself to others in terms of how they're studying and, like, you know, what works best for them, because, you know, not everyone has the same brain. We don't all learn the same. We don't all study the same. So, you know, some things that work well for others may be very detrimental to you. So kind of just keep in your own space and kind of like have that tunnel vision until you get to the end of, you know, the tunnel, because if you do depend on what others, you know, tell you, then it might end up hurting you.